This is Upwell, a new podcast from Only.one, featuring entrepreneurs, advocates, and leaders working to protect and restore the ocean and the planet. And I'm your host, Aaron Kinnery. Today we have Jeremiah Kittredge, the CEO of Only.one, who shares the vision and mission behind the organization and our work with partners around the world. Let's dive in. Thanks for joining Upwell for the last episode of the season, and hopefully not the last episode of the series, but that largely depends on the next 30 minutes. Before we dive into Only.one, I wanted to just get a sense from you of your background before you joined Only.one.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's great to be here. And sorry that the last episode of the season we're keeping in-house, but that's how it goes, I guess. So thrilled to be with you and excited to talk a little bit about a range of stuff. I'm like a sort of hybrid of a couple of different backgrounds. I was a teacher, I was a union organizer, and I ran a nonprofit for a while that tried to combine those two things into an advocacy organization that tried to change American education, and learned a lot across, the 15 years or so of work I did before coming and hanging out with everybody at Only.one. I guess I would say two things in particular. One is that it's really, really hard to build a durable, sustainable, high-performing social impact enterprise. And there's a range of reasons it's really hard, but when you do it well, it's really fun. And I guess the second thing is that so much of what we're trying to do at Only.one is this funky hybrid of kind of organizing people for change and building a whole new suite of tools to help other people do that also. And I think it's been really fun to kind of apply some lessons from some work in organizing and some work in kind of public policy to this new issue.
And so let's unpack that a bit more. What was the original vision behind Only.one?
Well, like all great organizations, I don't know that we knew what we were doing when we started. I think we had a vision that the global ocean audience is in one respect huge. Billions of people rely on the ocean to eat. And almost everybody on Earth has some reason to care about the ocean. Many people care deeply. Whether you are a highly affluent sailor or scuba diver from a coastal American state, or whether you're an artisanal fisher in Indonesia, obviously you care deeply. And yet the scale of the activist base around oceans relative to that total is quite paltry. And I think our feeling was that we could try to help all these other great policymakers and scientists and campaigners working on ocean issues and on climate issues more broadly by getting a lot more people to take action and to turn a deep sort of care and belief in the power of ocean into making a difference. And so we launched Only.one 3 years ago. And the original vision was to kind of build a home for all of the things that people could do to save the ocean. And so we launched this platform in September of 2020 with a vision that you could sort of come to a one-stop shop and we would help you figure out how to make a difference in the ocean. You could donate some money, you could take some advocacy action, and we had this theory that we could make it habit forming or repetitive or really fun to do it over time. And our view was we would get lots more people into the issue, and that would be powerful. And then also the things that they did would be powerful. They'd help tip the balance on a campaign that maybe somebody was trying to win, or they would fund a critical ocean issue like getting plastic out of rivers around the world. And we didn't really know what that was going to entail. We had some sense that it involved content. We had some sense that it involved campaigning, and we had some sense that it involved crowdfunding. And we knew we needed some product people and some advocacy people and a bunch of designers and some strategists, but exactly how that was all going to get cobbled together into what has become Only.one was certainly the experiment and the great kind of learnings and the fun of the last couple of years.
And what have been some of the major milestones or moments of impact and progress in the past 2.5 years since launch?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the first thing we had to prove is that people would actually find this valuable. And I mean that in two respects. One is that the individual user would actually take action with us and find it impactful and keep coming back. And second, that our great partners around the world who are really doing the hardest part of fighting for ocean and climate, which is managing campaigns or implementing on the ground solutions, found it useful to work with us. And I think we had to kind of prove both of those things out. And I think, it's great that, at least to some extent, I think that we have. We passed the 2 million action mark this past year. So almost 2.5 million people have taken action with us. More than 20,000 people have become donors and funded impact on the ground. And the data is good. We've been able to keep churn rates pretty low, and we've been able to get more and more people to become repeat action takers with us. And then I think the partners that we work with are broadly pretty pumped that we've been able to kind of add people power as another tool in the toolkit to a range of organizations and tried to be helpful where we can in changing policy for the better and in funding some critical work around the world that I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, a bit to that point on partnerships. I mean, it's been such a critical component of our approach, being able to work with some amazing leaders in the sector all around the world on various campaigns. What does a partnership look like with Only One? Like, what might we sort of bring to the table when working with a partner? What do we sort of look to the partner to help support? Maybe talk about like one of the campaigns over the past 2 years and what that partnership really looked like.
Yeah, and it's a work in progress, right? In the sense of, if you think about all the things that people and organizations need to do to like change a law or create a treaty, and I feel I should say, this is a good opportunity to just have a brief aside, which is like, we've been doing this for 2 years, and I'm in awe of the people who've been doing it for 30 or 40 or 50. I mean, we are standing on the shoulders of giants and trying to have some fun building a new and innovative thing. But I think sometimes, and I am always mindful of sort of, community organizers who do this really well, but you got to remember sort of what came before you. And it's important just to say that, we're a relatively small part of a massive, and really powerful movement and trying to add a piece to their great work. But to your question, if you think about all of the things you have to do to protect a species or create a new marine protected area on some portion of the ocean, you need a bunch of different skill sets, right? You need science, you need policy, you need people who really know how to lobby and engage policymakers. You need communicators, both who can make and distribute content, who can help influence what you read about in newspapers, and you need people who can be organized to make their voices heard on issues around the world. And I would say that one of the things that Only One is trying to figure out is how much of that work we do as this kind of supporter of and galvanizer of a movement's collective work. We started with digital communications because we observed that it could be really helpful to build one kind of center of ideally excellence around how we communicate digitally to people and how those communications inspire them to take action. And so when you partner with Only One, generally you are a best-in-class campaigner in your own right, and you're looking to get a little bit of additional help and support on how people around the world are activated on your issue. And so we'll work with you to try to figure out how to do that. We'll set some ambitious goals around what we can do to grow the ocean audience and movement in partnership with you, what the actions are that we really need people to take, whether it's contacting elected officials or signing petitions or attending some number of events. And we'll think about the content and the storytelling that we need to develop and distribute to help get that done. And then we'll work very closely with you to do that. And we've been thrilled to work with amazing organizations like Oceana on their work in Canada. We've been thrilled to work with Pew and the Antarctic Southern Ocean Coalition and others around all of the work that you've been leading for us, Aaron, in Antarctica. And we're kind of trying to understand more and more over time about how to do that work. And, we get more and more insights every day and, lots more to do.
And what are some of the either insights you've gleaned from the past couple of years working on this, either about, digital organizing or about the broader issue within ocean conservation? And how are those sort of influencing your thinking of the evolution of only.one going into this coming year?
I don't really know the sort of outer limits of what it means to help grow the ocean movement, in the sense of we started where we have we started on sort of digital and the work that we can do to tell stories to inspire people to act. And I think a couple of the lessons learned are really that work is critical but insufficient, right? That so much of what's being done to change policy and on the ground requires that full set of strategies and supports. And I think we're going to learn a lot over the next couple of years about all the stuff that we need to do, and maybe some of the stuff that we shouldn't do to be as powerful as we would like this movement to be. I guess two things I do think we've learned so far. Number one, organic growth is hard and getting harder. When we started this organization, you could do a lot of growth on the basis of large social media followings, and you could pretty efficiently spend a little bit of money to get a lot of action and activity. And that is getting harder and harder with, I think, the diffusion of people's attention on social media, and just the plethora of media that people see and that is targeted at them makes it more and more challenging. And so I think we try to be really thoughtful about how we design campaigns so that we can kind of capitalize on organic growth as best we can. But it's really hard. Number one, and I think number two, we've also learned that we have to be really thoughtful about targeting. Basically, we're learning a lot about matching campaigns with individual audiences and how you kind of have to be really intentional about, if you want to create a marine protected area in a certain geography on Earth, you really have to think about who's going to care about that issue and who isn't, and how do you target the people that are going to care the most, and how do you develop audiences, in specific regions around the world. And we've learned a lot about how hard that is, but also how important that is.
Two big areas you sort of touched on that only.one focuses on. So content really, when you look at sort of the broader philanthropic sector and foundations, there's much more investment than previously in storytelling and the potential for storytelling to drive broad awareness and to ultimately try to move those audiences to action. And there's probably still not as much as investment as there needs to be, but there has been more into that space. The other, though, that's less, I think, widespread in the nonprofit sector is the type of design and product thinking that we've really embraced. And to actually even have like a product team within a nonprofit is very unique, and you don't really hear that. And we have a whole team focused on user experience, product development, the features that are needed to drive some of this work forward. How are you thinking about either embracing new product features, evolving the user experience, embracing data to better, inform and really inspire audiences to take additional actions? Like, how does all of that sort of fit into the focus for this year and the work ahead?
Yeah, and look, quick shout out to the only.one team. I mean, for those of you that listen to Aaron's really amazing podcast, and I'm sure many of you do, you should just know how in awe of all of you I am, and how much it is so fun to kind of work with you all day in and day out. Yeah, I mean, you don't have many folks doing kind of advocacy and digital organizing that kind of work backwards from what does Headspace or what does Spotify tell us. I think that's a different way to think about it. And frankly, like, I think the thing that drove us in the beginning was this belief that so much of people's interaction with issues and causes is mediated by digital products now. And for better or worse, the way that people experience meditation or listening to music or deciding what they're going to cook for dinner has innovated and evolved massively in the last 10 or 15 years. The way that people take action digitally on an issue they want to change has not. And platforms like change.org and Avaz are extraordinary. And we can talk a little bit more about what they have taught us. But 15 years later or 20 years later, the tech stack is pretty similar. And one of the things that I think we observed is that in the same way that Headspace can make meditation habit forming, a similar kind of look and feel and approach to a consumer product focused on advocacy on oceans can create a similar sort of feeling of habit and really of fun. And I think we kind of felt like it was just kind of not that kind of enjoyable to be a digital activist in so many of these experiences. And really, like, it should be. I mean, these are issues that we all care about deeply. There are opportunities to be in relationship with your friends and neighbors and people you don't know around the world who care about the same issue. And they're an opportunity to learn a lot and see and learn a bunch of pieces of information that you didn't know before. And to feel genuinely, because it has the benefit of being true, like you're making a huge difference. And we were pretty motivated to build an experience for the individual user that was different than what existed before. And we're thrilled to be able to launch Only.one with a great group of kind of product leaders that were, for I think the sector they were working in, quite innovative. And really motivated by the idea that you should have as good a customer experience trying to create a new protection for a shark as you could choosing what movie you wanted to watch on Friday night.
We've spoken a bit about the advocacy campaigns, and that's one big piece of activities that folks can do when they hit Only.one. But of course, some of those campaigns, as you mentioned, we just obviously had some great success around the High Seas Treaty, but our partners who had been working on that campaign have been working on it for 2 decades, and sometimes some of these large advocacy wins, which can really move the world, take a much longer period of time. There's another portion of Only.one and the product experience where folks can have a direct impact immediately, and that's by joining as a member and funding projects around the world. Can you talk a little bit about that tranche of work and how we're working with some of our impact partners?
Totally. And one of the things I think we tried to learn more about early on is this relationship between the community of folks within Only.one that are giving money and the community of folks within Only.one that are taking other types of action. And one of the things we were committed to from day one was this idea that we really wanted to learn, could it be possible at scale to build a base of people who are allocating $15 or $20 a month on a recurring basis to ocean impact. And we launched a sort of crowdfunding effort from day one where we tried to build a recurring donor base of subscribers whose dollars we could meaningfully allocate to the field and give them an experience of really understanding where that money went and how it was allocated. And huge shout out to those that helped inspire us around how to do this. We're big fans, for example, of Charity Water and of sort of Scott Harrison's original vision around the idea that you could crowdfund huge amounts of impact and really bring a lot of transparency about how those funds were allocated back to the individual user. And their great work inspired us and inspires us to this day about how to think about this part of our work. But we have just under 10,000 folks who are recurring donors with us. And we have an 100% model. So we reallocate 100% of their contributions to outside impact, including even figuring out how to cover all of the overhead of that activity outside of their contributions. So they don't even have to pay their own credit card fees. And we give them a ton of information back about the projects that they've funded and the impact that it's had. So we work in 4 major areas: coral restoration, mangrove reforestation, plastics removal, and a kind of big carbon bucket around blue carbon impact more generally. And if you're an only one subscriber, you choose sort of the plan level that you want to contribute every month. And then in your profile, we will tell you down to the individual tree or individual kilo of plastic, kind of where your money went and to which partner and how it was funded. And, it's interesting because, oftentimes, and certainly this is true in organizing, we think about money as the indicator of really your deepest and most engaged user, right? If somebody's paying dues to their union, or they are contributing to a candidate they really believe in who's running for office, that person is highly, highly engaged. And we're thrilled that we've kind of been able to demonstrate that we can both attract and retain folks who are interested in being subscribers. I've all kinds of ideas, which we can talk about in this call, about ways that I think that experience could improve or innovate over time, but we're certainly thrilled with the initial progress.
I wanted to broaden out a bit more to sort of thoughts on the broader impact in nonprofit sector. You mentioned at the top the challenges of building an enduring and scaled organization within the space. And so how do you personally approach your thinking on strategy, priorities for yourself and for the organization, and really building and developing a strong team that can continue to be nimble and entrepreneurial and really sort of scale the work?
Yeah, I feel like I want to hear 100 really talented leaders answer that question, and then maybe I'll be smarter. I don't know that I want to answer it. I think that the coolest part of running a sort of smaller social impact organization is you get to know everybody you work with. You get to know all of their amazing strengths, and you kind of get to build the work around their enormous capacity, and then kind of work in a really manageable sort of set of teams to achieve it. And I think the hardest part of building these kinds of organizations, where you believe that you have something to contribute, but it requires its own enterprise to do it, is it's the classic build the plane while you fly it conundrum. We don't start these things often with huge amounts of initial capital in the bank that we can spend down as we experiment. We're raising the money to fund the work while we're doing the work, which means while we're experimenting, and sometimes while we're failing, and sometimes while we're succeeding. And we grow our team and infrastructure as we do that also. So we have to raise more and more money to support our core work, even while we're still very much in a learning mode. And I always have this sort of vision of like you're trying to get enough work out in the world fast enough to sustain your operations, because you kind of attract the interest of a broad diversity of supporters, while also not doing too much or doing too many varied things, or losing the ability to be somewhat disciplined about where you focus. And I guess I would say, the things that are hardest for me, our great senior leaders, of which you are one, love to point this out with some regularity, are saying no and not doing too much, right? And those are obviously related. It is really, really hard in the first couple of years to be entrepreneurial, but also disciplined. And we get asked to work on a ton of different issues, ton of different geographies, providing a ton of different types of supports to partners. And I probably over-index on trying to find a way to get to yes. And should probably be better about getting to know more often. And I think also, and certainly this is the lesson from, I think, most of the great consumer products in the digital space over the last couple of years, it's like doing one thing well is hard enough. And finding that genuine market fit for your first big idea is obviously enormously challenging and Herculean in its own right. And so making sure that as best we can, we stay really focused on a small sort of sliver of the pie that we know we can do really well, the better we're going to be. As I said earlier, though, we're also learning a bunch about the limitations of that. And so, this is the dance. You're kind of building it. You're making decisions about how much to bite off, how much to not bite off, and you try to make a bunch of meaningful progress day after day, that folks keep being interested in working with you, and you can attract more and more great people to do the work. It's fun. Building things is awesome. And it's fun to get to a stage where you're a little bit more structured and with a great team to boot.
You mentioned a few of these in passing, of everything from Avaz and Change.org to groups like Charity Water or Headspace. But outside of the ocean sector, what other companies or organizations or even resources do you look to for inspiration for advancing the mission and the work and some of the innovative opportunities within only.one?
Yeah, we've talked about a few of them. I mean, I'm so inspired by, first of all, just to say it, the great sector in which we work. We saw this piece around digital communications that could be additive. But, if you look at the groups of both individuals and organizations that spent the last 25 years trying to get this high seas treaty done, which just got kind of finally cemented and was an enormous victory. I mean, these are folks who've devoted their entire career to this issue, and I am in awe of their competence. And one of the things that's been super fun about working on oceans and climate is just getting to learn about the issue and the campaigns from the amazing people that have been working on it for so long. In terms of, sort of other sectors and other organizations, I am sort of in awe also of the scale of Change.org and Avaz. It is super hard to get to 9 figures of people, and both kind of have. And they actually are, far, far, far more integrated into the campaigns that they promote than some might think. And it's been really fun to learn a lot about how they connect the people that they kind of bring into these efforts to the partners that are working to win. And I've been super impressed with them. Charity Water's fundraising model is extraordinary. And have tried to learn / maybe sometimes steal as much of their insights and power as we can. And then I'm just always impressed with 2 different types of sort of social good movements and organizations. One is the amazing work over the last couple of years to get more and more people involved in gun violence prevention. I think you led a ton of this work in prior roles, Aaron, and sort of what I've watched unfold as the kind of sort of scales of that issue have gotten wildly tipped in the sort of righteous direction. It's just been really powerful to watch as that's unfolded. And we've certainly tried to learn a lot from the lessons in terms of organizing and digital strategy of that work. And then I'll say something a little bit controversial, which is just that, I think some of the, most impressive kind of like advocacy work over the last couple of years, has not been, from progressive groups. And I certainly think, you can only be as good as you are willing to understand the successes and strategies of everybody working on an issue, including those you don't agree with. And I would just encourage us to kind of look at every type of ideological spectrum and learn from all the different organizations working on these issues. Because you might not agree with their policy stance, but in many situations you can learn a ton about how to apply their strategies and tactics to what you believe in. And I would just sort of make a plug for keeping your eyes wide open to try to learn from everybody, just not just those who you agree with ideologically.
I think that's a good point. And I mean, one big part of that strategy has been an investment in an entire media ecosystem. And so what should leaders in either impact or advocacy organizations, what should they think about when it comes to deploying content to advance their strategy?
Well, I'll say something is maybe also somewhat unexpected. I'm pretty skeptical of the role of content for content's sake to drive change. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. It is so hard to get views. And if you think about the proliferation of media platforms and streaming services, over the last couple of years. In a world where the largest streaming services in the world are churning at higher rates and struggling to keep eyeballs, starting from scratch to build a competitor is really, really hard, probably impossible. And so one of the lessons that I think we've tried to learn, and sometimes learn the hard way, is we're not in the business of putting sort of content or stories out there just so people will watch them. We're in the business of thinking about how do we leverage great content and great storytelling to convert people to action. And I guess I would say that we try to be pretty mindful of, therefore, only investing in new content and new content distribution when we can tie it to a major call to action that we have. I think one of the things that's super interesting about Oceans is that you have so many incredible storytellers working on these issues, and all of that content, whether it's a Netflix series or a new YouTube series, has a role to play. I think we have to figure out how to do a better and better job of leveraging these amazing new content moments to sort of convert people to action. And I think that's been challenging on a range of issues to convert, say, long-form documentaries into movement-building opportunities. I think we on a range of sort of social good issues, we have struggled to do that, and I think we're all still learning how to do it better.
Yeah, I mean, we talk often internally about how impressions don't equal impact, and you ultimately have to figure out how to drive all of that inspiration and the sort of interest that you're building amongst audiences into some type of meaningful action to try to push for change. Two final questions, and I'll just lump them together because they're short, but also quite big. What will Only One look like in 5 years, and how can folks get involved?
Well, we think a lot about 2030, so I'll say 7 years, because we are really mindful of this goal of getting to 30% of the ocean protected by 2030. And I have this kind of lofty idea, it's sort of more bumper sticker than strategic plan, but I think it's cool to think about what if 30 million people were involved by 2030. And so, I don't know, I'll be an optimist for a minute and say, let's get 30 million people into the growing movement for oceans over the next 7 years. And I'd be thrilled to work with anybody who wants to join us on that mission. So how you get involved, go to only.one, become an activist or become a subscriber. Or if you are looking for a next place where you want to lend your skills, go to only.one/jobs and apply to work with us, because we desperately need your talents. And I would just say, anyone working on these issues that has any insights and feedback or thoughts about what you see, ping us, because we've built this thing, to collect all feedback and try to integrate as much as we can. So any critiques and any insights are helpful, and we try to use them. So fun to hear from everybody.
Well, thank you for that. Really appreciate you joining, though I'm not sure how much of I don't know if you could have said no, but really appreciate you taking the time. I think also we probably will continue another season. So
great. That's good to know. I was getting nervous.
All right. Thanks. Let's get back to work.
Thanks, everybody. See you.
Thanks again, Jeremiah, for jumping in on our final episode of the season. If you're listening to this episode, you know where you can find Only One, but I'll, of course, leave the links in the show notes at only.one/Upwell. Once again, that's only.one/Upwell. This week's episode was engineered by Jake Bowles, research was supported by Serena Cooper, and our cover art was designed by Joanna Marcus at Only One. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, and start your journey to help save the ocean and fix the climate today at only.one. For as little as $9, you can start planting coral and mangroves and removing plastics and carbon. Again, that's www.only.one. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back in a few weeks with an all-new season of Upwell.